Okay, big episode today. We have two new guests, as promised back earlier this summer. I'm excited to talk with a guy directly in front of me, but first, we are going to tease Rhamondre Stevenson's coming on at the end of this episode. Another 4-minute drill, football questions, non-football questions. He was awesome. We have a new MailFan segment, haven't done one of those in a while, and of course, Derrik Klassen, the aforementioned man in front of me, quarterback expert, to help us recalibrate the Drake Maye conversation, which has got very interesting here, especially locally, the last couple of weeks. But first, some housekeeping. Number one, I had a complete journalistic failure with Rhamondre, not asking about his viral moment with Steve Burton in one of the world's most awkward preseason interviews you will ever see. He actually gave me shit for it, for not asking afterwards off air, but he was great. Number two, small change of plans. I'll be back recording Sunday with a 53-man roster projection. No talk about the preseason finale. You'll watch it. We'll discuss it. But you want to know who makes the team? We'll learn on Tuesday. This will be my last and best guest. Number three, we had a couple new reviews on Apple. Thank you. A couple more emails. Mostly positive, but either way, that feedback helps us grow and is always appreciated. So please keep those coming. If you have a second, Spotify, Apple, reviews, ratings are always a big, big help. And if today's episode sucks, know that it will not be our next guest's fault. Derrik Klassen, again, as mentioned, as far as the worst intros you've ever had, and you've done plenty of shows, where does that one rank?
No, listen, learning I was going to be on the same episode as Rhamondre Stevenson is good enough for me. I love that guy, so I'm good.
He's a great dude. All right, Derrik Klassen, in case you were not familiar with his work, new co-host of the Athletic Football Show. You have heard him on the Mina Kimes Show with Lenny, seen his work on Bleacher Report, the 33rd Team, Perception with Matt Harmon. And back in the day, as I found out very quickly, NFL Spin Zone, where in 2014 there were headlines like, "What's next for Brian Hoyer?" which I really appreciated, a time where we could all read and watch Brian Hoyer, then NFL starter, and wonder what's next for him. And you explored it pretty well back in the day. Have you thought about that piece in a while?
Dude, Derrik? I probably have some headlines from back then on stuff that I've written so many things now that I've forgotten what I've written. I think if you asked me, have I written about Brian Hoyer before, I probably would have said no. So it's almost news to me that headline exists.
Yeah, no, I have plenty of those. And as someone who got his career started writing for SB Nation, specifically covering UConn football with a lot of film review, that is some depressing ass work, let me tell you. So I will not dig up any further headlines of yours to avoid anyone doing the same to me, because it was long. It was not good. But hey, we both we made it. So Drake Maye, you and I are in the fan club. I don't know where you're sitting in the hype train that was going long before he became a New England Patriot. But I appreciate your work on quarterbacks. It's always reasonable. It's rooted in good facts. There's data, obviously tape work. People who don't follow you should. QB, KLASS. So I just want to zoom out first before we get into the minutia. What are one or two things when you hear people talk about Drake Maye, you read them write about Drake Maye, that you think are just missed as someone who spent a lot of time studying who he was in college and so far the little peaks we've seen from him in the NFL?
Yeah, I would say the first thing is it almost seemed like the first thing anybody brought up with Drake Maye during the draft season, and even now, is footwork. And it was always a frustrating conversation to me, because I think there are legitimate criticisms that you can have with Drake Maye's footwork. I think specifically his drop back footwork, like going 1 to 2 to 3 as soon as you get the ball and being in a clean position to throw, quick game, throw a flat route, throw hitch route, whatever it is, something simple. He's not great at that. But I think people kind of took that to think that the rest of his footwork was bad. But I just don't think that that's the case. I think the longer he holds the ball, the longer he develops in a play, he actually does do a really good job of resetting in the pocket, understanding where he needs to move, getting himself into a better throwing position. And I think you saw that a lot at UNC, and especially behind a bad offensive line that kind of made him have to move around and get off his spot a lot. I think you actually saw him play pretty in control the longer he held the ball. It's just, I think some of those instances early in the down kind of, like I said, made people think that his footwork on the whole was bad and needed to be reworked. The other thing about his footwork is, he would do some drifting around in the pocket, kind of anticipating where rushers would come from. People took that as him having bad or skittish footwork and just doing stuff for fun. But if you really watch it, like 9 times out of 10, he's doing a really good thing to buy himself space in the pocket. So again, I think people just kind of misunderstood him there. I also think people a little bit misunderstood him too, in the sense of thinking he's more of a chaos playmaker than he probably is. And I think this was actually true of Caleb too. I think the thing was just, when you have the guys who are this talented, this athletic, who can make every throw on the field, and they're playing at programs as bad as USC and UNC were, yeah, man, they're going to go do some stupid stuff sometimes. Like they're going to go try to win the football game. And what I said about Drake and Caleb for a lot of the draft season was, I think when you get them to the NFL where they're going to have a more structured system, things are going to be a little bit more put together. They're probably going to play a little bit more put together. And I think we've seen that from both Caleb and Drake. So those to me were like the two biggest things that always frustrated me with the discourse about Maye.
So again, if you're not familiar with Derrik, that to me, in reading you and listening to you, perfectly encapsulated your approach of like, hey, there's some nuance here in the footwork. Here's why. And then there's an acknowledgement of like, yeah, some casual understanding and empathy for the quarterbacks in bad situation. They're going to do stupid stuff, and that's okay. It's not like all hellfire and brimstone with the negative plays or ascribing it entirely to that player's shortcomings or lack of courage or character or competitive fire or whatever. It's just sometimes that's the situation you're in, which is not an excuse. It's just what it takes to evaluate as you do properly. To the footwork point, I appreciate again that you dove into that, and I will say this: it's a good thing not to broad brush in that way, because in the same way you might trust a grandmother as being a good driver. She'll get you from point A to point B, and you'll get there safely. But if you need her to be in a hurry to shave some time off of your ETA, not the best driver that you have there, right? Like in a certain space, she's very functional. Drake Maye, just needs to tidy up, stopping at stop signs. And, most of the time he can turn on red, but not always, and kind of deciding when that is and paying attention to signs. That's all that it is. When you saw his preseason, though, specific, let's just stay with the footwork for a second. The drop back footwork and then the stuff you believe he had taken care of. Did you see any meaningful difference in those 4 drives against Philly? We'll just ignore the one against Carolina because Carolina wasn't even playing at starters. But what did you see with respect to the footwork in the preseason?
I mean, I think you kind of see most of the same issues you saw at UNC. And again, I want to clarify, it's mostly just a drop back issue. It's when he goes to 1 to 2 to 3 and he gets to that very top of the drop and then he's throwing right off of that. That's where I think sometimes his footwork can get weird. He had that one flat route. I think it was maybe his second throw of the game. You can see his lead foot is like too tight to his target. So, the target is like on the left sideline. His front foot is inside of where his aiming point should be. And that just kind of disrupts how your rotation is with your hip, and it makes the torque really weird. And so you see him like finish the throw kind of awkward, and that's why it sails the way that it does. He just kind of does that. Like I said, on those short throws, like it's just something he needs to clean up. He had another throw, I think, to Baker on like a little spot route, maybe in the third quarter, where he kind of does the same thing. His footwork is just a little bit too tight to the target. He ends up missing for that reason. But then on the flip side, the longer he holds the ball in a play, the cleaner his footwork is. I mean, look at the throw to Baker on that third down, where he's just, as soon as his back foot hits and he knows he has to hitch up and transition elsewhere, that's clean, because he's like getting himself off of that immediate throw thing. He's allowing himself to reset. And so when he resets like that, he looks great. So I think it's just the longer he holds the ball, the better his footwork is. And I think some of the early stuff of just cleaning up that quick transition from end of drop back to throw, that can get cleaned up. Whereas I think his more natural feel for sliding in the pocket and knowing when to hitch and all that other stuff, that's harder to teach. And he's already good at that stuff. So I'm perfectly fine with some of the growing pains with some of the quick game stuff.
And I think, too, that's another important delineation is the stuff that had everyone so excited about him as a prospect. You go, not only does he look like all the best quarterbacks in the league now, he's got this kind of innate feel and talent that's much harder to teach. The stuff that he needs to clean up. You get old school West Coast guys like Alex Van Pelt, who's still doing drills from Paul Hackett in the 70s, to fix that footwork. It might take some time. It could be frustrating. You go, why the hell was that flat ball 7 yards over Kayshon Bouttie's head? Oh, he still grabbed it anyway. Great, he counts as a completion. But that seems to be the big line, right? The stuff that he needs to fix, he can. The stuff that he's great at, you might never get out of even some above average quarterbacks.
That's exactly it. And that's why I was so willing to bet on him. Like you just see some of the pocket movement, the talent. It's just, that's the stuff you can't teach. And this even logic applied to like when I loved Anthony Richardson as a prospect. They're slightly different. Drake Maye is a little bit further along, but it's the same idea of, some of the stuff he struggles with, we can get him there. Some of the stuff he already does at a high level, there's maybe a dozen of those guys in the league at best. So that is why I'm willing to bet on Maye. And I just thought there were so many examples in this game where you could just see how fast Drake operates. And that to me is the most impressive part. Again, that third down throw to Baker where he is, what's so impressive to me is if you watch a lot of the best quarterbacks, as soon as they hit their final drop step, they're not like sitting there for a second and then moving on to whatever their hitch is or their next read. they're taking that drop step and literally bouncing off that back foot into their hitch or into their next read. You saw Maye do that 3 or 4 times in this game. And I was like, man, if he's already there, that's the type of stuff that I saw from like Joe Burrow as a rookie, where you were like, oh yeah, he's ready to go already. We don't have to worry about this. And so the fact that Drake is doing it, only preseason, but was still really impressive to me.
Yeah, not to mention those throws were third down too. So it's not like the Eagles are spinning the dial, though I think Fangio played on the deep ball to Baker to get like super in the weeds. Some of this empty like poach coverage, where the safety closest to Baker and the deep ball that we all, just absolutely bleeped our pants over was, the safety was looking in the opposite direction. Like he was looking at the number 3, the innermost slot on the opposite side. So it was a good route. It was a good play call, and he puts it on the money. But Drake understood that in a way that was, okay, I'm going to have one-on-one here, even though there's a safety over the top. He's not going to be paying attention, and maybe he'll fall for the kind of nod that Baker gave in his post and put the ball on the money. Now, that said, I was very rosy about his performance last week after doing my own film breakdown, and then made the point. So this guy goes 5 of 10 for 24 yards outside of a 23-yard flow screen that was very well blocked and executed with some bad defense by the Eagles. And we are all celebrating and then explain why. But in rewatching the game again, Derek, like there are a couple things that I would hone in on for him where I think he has been eager to throw the ball deep because that's who he is. And it's not someone we really saw in the first 2-3 weeks of camp, when literally half his practices had one attempt or fewer over 10 yards. And he's living within this kind of check down Charlie realm. But he seemed to be married to Baker almost predetermined on that deep incompletion. And then where Baker was out of bounds, and then the defensive pass interference call. Did you see any of that? Because to me, long-term, that's an issue. But I don't know if it's just a kid who's finally scratching an itch that he's been resisting for 3 weeks in practice.
I think it's a little bit more of that because, I think Drake Maye is naturally a guy who he wants to make the coolest throw on the field. And he's willing to do some of the more, buttoned up stuff. Like there was a play action call they had where he gets to the top of his drop, one hitch, and as soon as the hitch is over and he knows his guy's not open, checks it down. It's like, okay, he can do that. And I know he knows in the back of his mind that making those plays is the right call, but there is some part of him where he's like, I'm just going to throw it up sometimes. And again, I don't think this is the worst thing, especially if you really trust your receiver in that way. Like, again, not to bring up, Joe Burrow a million times, but like Joe plays this way. He'll make the simple, quick throws when they're there and stuff, but there are 2-3 times a game where it's like it might not be open to T or to Jamar Chase, but he's going to throw it anyway because he's like, my guy's there. And, if we can generate an explosive here, then we're going to do it. And Maye is obviously more than talented enough to make those throws consistently. So especially in the preseason, I'm not too worried about like stylistic stuff. Maybe if this hangs over into the season when he starts playing and he's just consistently too aggressive and passing up some of the easy stuff, then maybe I'll be not concerned like long-term, but like, hey man, let's dial this down a little bit. But for now, I think I'm okay with him scratching the itch a little bit.
Yeah. And I think too, the other part about this, and he'll live and learn. It was his second freaking preseason game. In some instances, the second, third, fourth, fifth drive of his entire NFL career. They had a drive concept, which for the folks at home, it's a shallow cross underneath with the dig over the tops of 12 yards and then in cut over the middle of the field, the kind of high-low action. And then instead he just threw to Baker on the opposite side, deep down the sideline. That dig or deep over was open to Mitchell Wilcox, shockingly, in the first instance of the Baker incompletion. And they had another possible first down throw to him or the shallow in the third quarter when it said he just saw single coverage and was like, I'm going to give it up. Because Joe Burrow has Jamar Chase and T. Higgins. And that's the big difference. It's like he's working with Javon Baker, whose routes are as rough as mine might be if I went out there at least today. And he's a much better receiver, but like Maye, learning to harness his talent. Were there any other nitpicks that you had? Because again, like it's the completed 48-yarder would have made all the difference in the world. But I think most of us understood that. And that's why we wrote positively. If you were going into the quarterback's room with him the next day, what are you saying? Hey, we got to address this first in practice next.
Yeah, mostly it would just be the 2 quick game footwork examples I brought up. Mm-hmm. I think those were his worst plays. I will say, too, there was that stretch there kind of at the end of him playing where he had the 2 throwaways back to back. The first one I actually thought was a really good decision because they play this like man coverage where they didn't actually have a center fielder. They're like free player. Their free zone player was more of like a rat kind of watching Maye. Everybody's covered up and he just kind of tries to get out of the pocket, realizes nobody's open, throws it away. Cool. That one's good. The second one, the right guard kind of loses immediately. And that's where Maye is opening to his right side. Right guard loses immediately. He's going to make the throw, but it's all covered because the defensive lineman's in the way. And then he kind of like panics for a second. Is like, oh no, I don't know where to go now on this play. I think he started to try to run, realized that wasn't going to be open, and then he kind of bailed again and kind of got a little skittish. I think if he had like backed up just for a second in the pocket, gave himself time to look left, somebody would have been open, and somebody was open. So that was really the only other play. So again, I would say the two footwork mess ups that he had early, and then maybe that second throwaway where he could have been a little bit more patient. But I think otherwise, it was a pretty encouraging performance for me.
Okay. Let's go big picture again. I know you've not been at practice every single day, and even if you were, you understood, as much context as I try to deliver around. Oh, he was 8 of 11 here today. He was only 7 of 12 the other day. Like it matters where the miss is, how deep, what's the coverage like. So much more nuance. But whether it's from what you've seen from him specifically in the preseason, or just going down rookies like him historically, what are the next checkpoints or boxes you want to see him check before we really get into he's in the starting conversation, unless you're there already?
I mean, I'm there already.
Okay.
And that's not even necessarily to say that right now, today, he's a better quarterback than Jacoby Brissett. I think Jacoby Brissett, when he's got the right stuff around him, he's playing well. He can be like, in the low 20s of quarterbacks, quarterback 22 or whatever, which isn't fantastic. But when you're a player of his caliber, that's pretty good. I think he can be that kind of guy.
Or the New England Patriots right now would take quarterback number 22 the last 3 years.
Yeah. After having like 30 and 39 last year. I would say that's good. But for Maye, I think it's more just that some of his skills lead me to believe he's a guy who's going to be fine if he has to play early. Like his pocket presence and his pocket movement leads me to believe, okay, he can already handle one of the hardest parts of the game right now. I think his processing speed, even if he isn't, like we said, he's a rookie, he's not going to make the right decision every single time. And maybe he'll take a couple shortcuts like that sideline throw to Baker. But generally, I think he processes at a pretty high level for a rookie. That's a good start. And then the physical tools kind of just are going to give him this margin for error that rookies, kind of need, just because of how athletic he is, how good his arm is. So, and the other thing is, Maye kind of seems like a crazy person in the right way, which is to say that I don't think him having some rookie failings where if he's going out there by week 8 and they're 2-6 and he's getting beat up, I really don't think that's going to have the worst, I don't think that's going to ruin him, especially with how much I kind of like this staff and trust this staff to like keep him even keeled. So to me, he's a guy you just throw into the fire and hope that he can figure stuff out by week 8, week 10.
Well, let's stay on the staff, because I haven't talked about Van Pelt, I think, for a couple months, in the way that I thought the scheme fit was really positive. The Browns lead the league in air yards. It's all deep play action shots off of an outside zone based run game, but they do enough kind of duo and some counter concepts to sprinkle it in there. But it's just downfield, downfield, downfield. What else gives you confidence, or why are you confident about the staff with Drake Maye?
It's not even fully the offensive staff. It's Gerard Mayo. He seems like the guy who just gets it to me. And I think he's going to kind of be the type of guy who keeps everyone understanding what the goal is and kind of having a good long-term outlook on stuff, and not like if they're 1-5, by week 6, like everybody's panicking. I think Mayo is the kind of guy who can kind of keep guys in line a little bit, almost like Dan Campbell was able to do with the Lions a few years ago when they were just absolutely terrible. I expecting some sort of similar effect there. So that's what a lot of it is to me. I will say what I'm curious about with Van Pelt, I know it's supposed to be kind of a zone running thing, but I'm almost more think that a like duo and counter and power, that style of play action actually kind of fits Maye a little bit better. Just because I think it allows for a little bit more. I think when you get into that world, so like when you're in the zone world, I think rollouts are a little bit better, all that sort of stuff. But I think when you're in the hard play action world with power and counter and duo, I think you get some more access to like dig throws and some of the seam throws and some of the stuff like that. Drake is really, really good at throwing those. And so I kind of think that is more the world that they should live in, but either one's going to work. So it's not a huge deal.
Well, and for folks who are going, okay, what the hell is the difference between that world of, more man block runs and the play action that's afforded with the pulling guard, but it's actually not a run, even though they pulled a guard and it's a play action throw. That's what you watched with Tom Brady for 20 years. Those were the throws, yes. The seams to Gronk, the digs to even Brandon LaFell, if you want to go back 10 years. That was the world that he lived in. I'm with you. I do think, though, the boot game, at least for me, would simplify what a lot of like a 3-level reads is, kind of come into one side of the field. If it's not there, throw it away. And we even saw an instance of his, speaking about Drake Maye now, second reaction ability when he's on that naked right after the big dig completion to Baker and it's 1st and 10 and Nolan Smith just says hello immediately and he's got to flip it into the flat, which before would have sent Mac Jones and Billy Zappi just down into a puddle. And rightfully so. Nolan Smith, the big menacing guy who wants to take your head off. Maye hops backward, flips it around him. And I just go, that's the stuff that I think works with the outside zone game. But maybe they get to a little bit of both here as they kind of find their offense.
Yeah, and again, I don't think that stuff's going to be bad. I think bringing up that play is a perfect example. Like, Maye will be good at the rollout stuff. I just think purely as a passer, it's, and I'll say this selfishly, it's just cooler to watch a guy hit a dig route or a seam route. I mean, it's why watching Brady was so cool, where some of the rollout stuff can be, sometimes it's just wide open and it's not as fun. But no, on that rollout, him being able to get to those arm angles too is, more and more guys are able to do it in the league now, but it's kind of is a requirement to be able to do it. Maybe 10 years ago, only 5 or 6 guys were able to do that consistently. Now it's probably closer to a dozen, but you got to be one of those dozen. And Maye certainly has that, which is just another feather in his cap.
Do you watch the NBA at all, Derek?
Not really. Not really.
Okay, so the reason I ask is because there's I don't know the last time he was in the booth, but Mark Jackson, when he was calling all the NBA finals and would, reach into the same bag of 4 cliches or analysis when you were watching Steph and LeBron go at it and Warriors Cavs 3 years in a row was great defense, but better offense. And I feel like when we talk about the arm angles and the second reaction ability and the playmaking, that to me is where we're at a level of where these quarterbacks can see the perfect defensive call. The defense got what it wanted. Nolan Smith, one-on-one, unblocked against Drake Maye, and his playmaking was the better offense to that great defense in a way that I think that's the next level of when Tom Brady had a perfectly defended play, he just had to throw it away. He is the greatest quarterback of all time, but was missing that playmaking piece that I think now is more common, like you're saying across the league with the arm angles, that there's just no answer for that because I will either buy more time or I will do something off schedule that you can't anticipate because you did anticipate the play call and you got it right, but the play's not over yet.
No, that's so right. I mean, there's going to be, I think in the modern NFL, defenses are better than they were a long time ago. I know there was that little scoring run for, maybe 5-6 years ago where offenses were putting up a ton of points, but I think the players are much better. And I think especially over the past couple of years, defenses have really honed in on what offenses are doing. You have to be able to, there's going to be probably 8 plays a game out of your 34 35 dropbacks where the defense just has you smoked and you have to go make a play. Yeah. And what percentage of those 8 plays that you can actually make over the defense kind of determines what quality of quarterback you are. And Maye is to me the quality of quarterback that on a good day can make 6 of them out of 8. And that's when you really start to have a guy who is special.
So to answer my own question 5-10 minutes ago, whatever it was, what are the next checkpoints that I want to see from him? He's getting closer to being more aggressive downfield, which I think is a sign of comfort and understanding timing and just the offense in general, which is good. He's getting there. The protecting the ball, I think, was well overblown in college. You understood when you watch those turnover-worthy plays why he was doing that. Some of them were bad decisions, just not here to excuse all of them, but the rate of turnover-worthy plays in college did not have me concerned, does not have me concerned in the NFL. And even then, he's 21. He's going to do stupid things. What I want isn't even necessarily tied to him, aside from just get better, be more consistent. I want them to settle the situation around him, which isn't to say pick the receivers, pick the offensive line and go, but they haven't done that yet. Secondly, we don't know how defenses are going to attack them, and they will have a buffet of options, Derek, when we get to the regular season of what stunts you want to run, which linemen you want to attack, how much man coverage you want to play, 90 or 100%, and how can the Patriots combat that? So I think once the Patriots understand the lay of the land when it comes to their offense versus NFL defenses, and you understand Layden Robinson's going to start for us. He's just been that good as a rookie, or Caden Wallace, or whoever it might be. Then I want Maye to be able to step into it. Not because he can't handle the pressure. His sack avoidance has been better in camp than Jacoby Brissett's is. Statistically, I test all of it. But I just want things to be a little bit more stable than they've been. And that to me, I think is the biggest concern. Because not only is he just young and he can handle the pressure, he's building new habits. And to go back to the driving analogy of forget your grandma for a second, but if you were on the highway after getting your permit as a 16-year-old and all this hectic masshole drivers around you, that's going to screw with you and your just general mental state going on a 2-lane road going 40 miles an hour. You need to understand how to handle different situations. If you're thrown into the fire immediately, I don't want any kind of regression from the habits he's building footwork or reads or anything, because he just needs to survive instead of thrive, which is ultimately what you want.
No, that's a great point. And for me, I'm less worried about the receiver core and more about the offensive line. The receiving core is not great, but I at least look at these guys and it's like there's a role for everybody, right? And it makes sense to me. Like Baker can be kind of your vertical X. Polk is kind of just a do it all, but he's got, I think, going to feast over the middle of the field, and he can do a little bit with the ball in his hands. Obviously, a guy like Pop Douglas can kind of be your underneath yak type of guy. So like everyone's role at least makes sense to me. So it's like, okay, they can put something together here that's not going to look janky. The offensive line is where I get a little bit, I just don't know what the construction is going to look like because, I know at first the idea was Caden Wallace was going to come in and play left tackle, but I don't think he looked very good at left tackle. But then at right tackle, he actually looked pretty comfortable. And so it's like, what are they actually going to do with him?
It's shocking. That's a guy who played 4 years at right tackle in college. NFL
40 college starts at right tackle, doesn't look good at left tackle. Who would have known?
Yeah.
So I actually, that's my question to you. What is the starting five supposed to be if you were to guess right now?
So, and the other player we haven't mentioned yet is Chukwuma Okorafor, who fine starting right tackle for the Steelers for 6 years. So adequate. Signs for 1 year, $4 million before free agency. Doesn't test the whole open market. They say, yeah, he's our left tackle. He did it in college. I go, okay, there are a lot of stuff I did in college I could not physically do now. And he started camp there for 2 practices. He's not been back since, except for a little bit here and there the last couple of days. So this is a long way of saying, I don't know. And right now they're counting on Vidarian Lowe at left tackle, Sidney Sow at left guard, David Andrews at center, Michael Onwenu still at right guard, and maybe Okorafor, maybe Caden Wallace at right tackle. The one thing I will say is this, because I've been banging the Mike Onwenu at right tackle drum. One, he's 350 pounds, self-reported. I don't know if they want him playing at that weight at right tackle. Number 2, when they have started to rotate the last 3-4 days in practice, and this is notable to me, they pull Sal from left guard, who's had a pretty good camp, and then Okorafor at right tackle. Okorafor, I get. Plug in Caden Wallace, maybe he's better, we'll see. But if Sal is right now your top 3 lineman, that to me says we're putting Layden Robinson, who's our college right guard, over the left side, as opposed to just keeping Layden at right guard where he's comfortable and moving Mike Onwenu out. So as much as I might want, say that 5 more times, I might want Mike at right tackle, they don't want to do that. They're pulling one of their better offensive linemen, moving a rookie to a new spot, and that might be the starting 5, which is to say they don't know, so how could I?
That would confuse me too, because I will say Layden Robinson, he might have something, man. He kind of looked good. Yeah, and I don't know how they're going to fit him into the lineup because, Sidney Sow is kind of an ass kicker too, and Onwenu, obviously, when he's playing guard is really good. So I might be with you. Maybe just move Onwenu back to right tackle. I think he's played pretty well there when he's had to. It's just, I don't know, man. I will say too, the reason I said I want more duo, counter, power, that stuff, just look at the offensive linemen they had. That's what these guys do. Like, that's what they're built for. So they can probably be fine on the zone run stuff, but let's just go maul some people and put them in the ground.
Yeah, and I've heard them say in press conferences like, hey, we're still finding our identity and we're going to figure this out. And that's something people just say in August in the NFL, and I think largely it's true. But you need to know quickly what you're good at, because that menu is going to be very small just based on your talent, and then stick to it and find what, appropriate number of counters to keep the defense off balance and just live in that world, live in that space. And I don't think they have yet. They are still majoring in zone. But we'll see, because they're going to learn a lot. Cincy, Seattle, the Jets, then the Niners. Like these are defenses who are not messing around. Which brings me to my last question. And this would, get you on Boston Sports Talk Radio if you ever want to join that hellscape from any time of thing we've been talking about for the last 2 months. When should Drake Maye start? And you watch a preseason, it sounds like you're ready to start him now. But we agree, like, the situation around him is so fluid. I want to wait personally at least 6 weeks. Where do you land on this?
Yeah, so I think he's the type of player as an individual who could play week 1. Like I said, I think even with a less than ideal situation, I think he's just the kind of guy who has the talent, who has the makeup to where he's probably going to be fine by the end of the season. But I think you've kind of sold me on the idea that it's not so much about him. It's about can we find the starting five that we like? Can we really lock down these receiver roles and make sure everybody is on the same page about where everyone needs to be and what roles everyone is playing? And as an offense, we understand what we're supposed to be. So I think that would make sense. I think the trickiest part of it is, usually with rookie quarterbacks, you try to find like, oh, what's the week 4 or 5 or 6 game where, maybe you're not playing a great team. You can put it. That's just not on the table for the Patriots this year. They play like a murderer's row of defenses almost every single week. And so waiting for the perfect opportunity to put him in just doesn't really exist. Maybe like Miami, what is it, week 6 or 7 is like, of that stretch, maybe the most easy, but even then it's probably still an above average defense. So they're no slouches. So yeah, good luck, man. I think the timing of when they throw him in doesn't matter. It's more just kind of like you said, can they stabilize the rest of the offense a little bit and make sure everyone's solidified?
I like making this joke in the podcast that we need to print the shirts, and you've had 2 phrases that I would make shirts out of. Good luck, man, the 2024 Patriots, and then doesn't look that janky, the 2024 Patriots receiving core, because that's just where we're at. Actually, I lied. I'll get you out on this because I'm actually writing a piece later this week, and it's well spirited. It's not negative. It's not making fun of anyone. It's not sarcastic. It's just acknowledging Patriots fans have not watched a rebuild since Bill Belichick got here in 2000 and they went 5-11. Do you have a team who do you root for? And then what would your advice be to fans who are about to witness a team that's actively rebuilding?
Okay, so this is not going to be the answer I think you were expecting. As far as NFL, I don't have a team I root for anymore.
Okay.
I used to be a Ravens fan. You might love this answer. That pick Flacco threw on the left side in like the 2014-2015 AFC Championship game. He threw it like right at the left pylon. I don't remember who picked it off, but he threw that. This was towards the end of the game.
Yeah,
he threw it like right at the pylon.
Yeah.
Yes, it was Theron Harmon. Yeah. He picked it off, and I was like, I just don't really care anymore. So I just stopped being a fan, basically. The only other sport I'm a fan of actually is I watch professional League of Legends a lot. And I'm a 100 Thieves fan. And so I started watching again in 2018. The first year, they were awesome. They went to the title. They ended up losing it, but like they were a really good team. The next 2 or 3 years was like this massive rebuild of like, all right, we're bringing in young players. We're trying to see how all this stuff works. So to me, it's just cherish the little moments where the young players actually look like they can be building blocks. Because eventually you can put together a team. Like that was kind of the 100 Thieves thing is they eventually found 1 or 2 players that were like, all right, this is a building block. And then they brought in a bunch of veterans to kind of clean it up and actually make a good team. You just got to pray that you find 1 or 2 of those building blocks. And, obviously the quarterback should be one of them.
So I nodded and gave a because I'm a polite host, but now I'm going to be a rude host. Can you explain? I've heard of League of Legends very quickly what that is, like what we were just listening about. So it isn't a criticism. It's just like to inform what we're talking about. I think the themes you mentioned, young players, cherish the little moments, absolutely spot on. Cosign. I think that's great advice. I might steal it for this column, but just a little more insight there.
Yeah, so it's a 5-on-5 computer game. It's kind of like a top-down. Maybe people are more familiar with like StarCraft. It's a little bit similar to that in terms of the look. But basically, there are just 3 lanes on the map, and different characters go into the lanes. And the goal is to just push them as far as you can, get into the enemy base, and explode the Nexus. So there's a bunch of different characters that do a bunch of different things, and they interact in different ways. But that's pretty much the gist of it. It's in terms of the pacing, is probably closer to like soccer or something, or basketball maybe. So it's not as like set play as football, but that's probably my closest analogy. It's the best I can do.
Close for it. No, that was well said. I have a picture in my head. I understand. We had a comparison that definitely works. Derrik, this has been awesome. First conversation we ever had. I hope to have you back on the show. Listen to him at the Athletic Football Show, co-host. Read him at definitely plenty of places as you continue to do great work, specifically on the quarterbacks, and follow him at QBKLASS. Derrik, thank you, man.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
The NFL regular season is almost here, but you don't have to waste your time watching more preseason outside of the Patriots. You can play Prize Picks all summer. America's #1 daily fantasy sports app has over 5 million active viewers, and unlike other apps, you guys, you know this by now, you don't play against anyone. You just pick against the numbers. If you pick more or less on 2 to 6 player stat projections, you watch the winnings roll in, even taking $10 going all the way to 1,000. So sign up today and get $50 instantly when you play for just $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. And then when football does roll around, man, if you think Tyreek Hill is going to go for over 90 yards in the season opener, Miami does pretty well in their season openers. That's an easy win. If you think the Patriots defense is going to show up and hold down Joe Burrow in Cincinnati, take the under on Joe Burrow. It's that simple. It's that easy. You've heard me talk about this for the Red Sox. God willing, they'll be playing in October. You can do all kinds of sports, but get ready for football with Prize Picks. It's available in more than 30 states across the country. So download Prize Picks today and use the code CLNS for a different bonus. This first deposit match is up to $100. That's right. Just put in CLNS on Prize Picks for a deposit match up to $100. Prize Picks, run your game. Okay, it's been a couple months, but we have another MailFan segment. Joe Ashadi, first 3-time member of the MailFan Club. This is how it works. You guys know by now, hopefully. If you like to submit mailbag questions, first of all, I appreciate it. Second of all, you can take that question and come on the show and answer it yourself for 5 to 10 minutes. We can go back and forth if you show me proof of receipt or donation, $1 or more to Boston Children's Hospital. Joe has done this on multiple occasions. That's why Joe is back. And Joe has a question here today. But first, I have a question for you because we just chatted off air. Do you think we should change the format of the MailFan segment where I ask you your own question and then you answer it and then we go back and forth? Because I feel like you, after me, probably should have the most say in this and that you've been on this segment more than anybody else except for myself.
Oh, geez. A lot of pressure. Well, first off, thanks for having me on again.
Yeah.
I will say, I think a lot of times that the questions, I'm not going to, put myself up on a pedestal in the sense that you know more than us. And I would love to, I'm happy to answer my question, but, I don't know if anyone really cares about my opinion at the end of the day. So I'm happy to answer the question. And I think that's, it's great to have fan perspective. And I think that's a benefit of this podcast where you're not just, it's just two beat writers talking or two insiders talking. So, that's not really an answer to your question. But
I was going to say that's the longest mealy mouth yes I've ever heard. So we are. Well, I'm going to take your feedback, but I am not going to apply it today. We are going to continue with the format, but I'll think about it later, and I'll ask you your question, which in essence was in two parts, right? Drake Maye, first year coach, inexperienced, still just year 6 of coaching for him. Period, in any kind of capacity. Is he maybe escaping a little bit of the criticism or some scrutiny, right? There's no real reason to criticize him yet, except for what he says in the media, which I did on occasion in the offseason. Then, of course, people get upset. But is he flying under the radar, maybe for the talk radio TV sense? And number 2, is there anything that I've seen that would either encourage me or discourage me about what happens next? So I'll let you go on number 1, because I think there's like a media aspect to this, right? Like, and we should be, open season on us at all times, just like the coaches and players. We work in the public eye. So do you think he's flying under the radar unfairly?
I don't think it's unfair. Definitely not unfairly. I think if anything, it's a benefit to him where I'm thinking of a scenario if the Kraft kind of grand plan had worked out where Bill gets his wins and he kind of rides off into the sunset and Mayo transitions on, and there's a scenario where Mac Jones is the franchise quarterback and we're really, this offseason is about, or next offseason is about the Drake Maye era. And instead of you having to chart how many, botch snaps there are, you're doing a TikTok of everything that Mayo is doing at practice. Oh, he's over at the offense. He's over at the defense. Oh, he's doing this. He's doing that. So I think he's going to benefit from the fact that his words are getting parsed, but they're not getting, every single word is getting parsed. He's not getting compared to Bill in every sense. He's allowed to be a coach a little more than just being kind of the new face in town. He's not the only new thing. There's so much other things to focus on. I do think once the season starts and if the offensive line gets settled, at least they have a starting 5 that they're stuck with, and Brissett starting a couple games, and the focus will turn to him. And the first time that he calls a timeout at the wrong point or forgets to call a timeout or mismanages the clock, there will be attention on him. But I think for now, he's probably benefiting a bit from the fact that he's not the only story in town. He seems to be the 4th or 5th story right now, which is probably a good thing for him, allowing him to focus on the team.
Yeah, his job, right? I think your point is a sound one. There's so much newness around this team and in very key spots, right? It's not just the head coach. It's the quarterback. It's the offensive coordinator. It's the whole offensive staff. The offensive line is still a concern. even the quarterback competition. It's not just Drake Maye, right? Jacoby Brissett is relatively new, came back obviously from his rookie year. So all of that attention has gone over Mayo, who all he needs to do so far right now, this feels like very early campaign. We're in an election year, right? Like your earliest stops are more style than substance. He doesn't have to talk policy yet in a way that could be measured or criticized in a substantive way. But you get into the season, okay, you need to roll out like how you're actually going to govern if you're running for, let's say, president or whatever. And so once we get into that stuff, then I think, to your point, like, yeah, it's going to be open season. But he can smile in front of the mics. He can crack jokes. And that's not to say this is at all disingenuous. It's just who he is. But there haven't been serious decisions, the ones that we've gotten on him for. I say we, I exclude myself from this majority, but it was majority. Oh, my God, only one preseason drive for Drake Maye. Well, what are the stakes of that? Okay, like if he had played 2 or 3 more, are we really learning that much more? Because he was not going to play more than a quarter or a half in that game. So to your second point about is there anything, or second part of your question, is there anything I've seen? The only thing I would highlight, because in-game management doesn't really count in the preseason, yada, yada, is the buy-in from the veterans. And it helps when you stuff a ton of money in their pockets, a la Hunter Henry and Jabril Peppers and Devon Gacho and all these guys on the way down. But they appreciate the changes he made in a way that's not just, all right, our workday is a little bit easier. Oh, we've got an Xbox now and a PS5. It's they believed in him before he was a head coach, and that's only grown since after. So that to me is important because, as you know, if you have like a crappy boss, I'm sure, I don't know if your boss is crappy or not, but you can imagine this. If it's a particularly hard day and you like your boss, you're a little bit more willing to get through the crappy parts of that day or whatever the project might be because of your respect for that person. If you don't, you're more likely to just watch the clock and try to run the day out. Am I wrong?
Yeah, for sure. 100%.
How do you like your boss? I don't think he listens, or this person listens to this podcast. Is it okay? You're more new Mayo, or are they more Bill?
I work for my family business, so I probably don't want to put too much on.
Well, I mean, this is kind of family business, right? They kept Elliot Wolf, who was in the front office. Gerard Mayo obviously came up in the system. So this is the parallels here. I don't want to ask about the family spending. That might be something, for another day on top of ownership, a little stickier. What do you think, Les? And we'll get you out on this, just things that you've seen from Mayo or maybe something you want to see from Mayo early on that would inspire your confidence as a fan, as an outsider, but someone following this team pretty closely.
Yeah, I would say, like you said, in-game management, you can't really do much in the preseason. It's what happens with, I guess, I look at it, I'm a Notre Dame football fan, and Marcus Freeman was a new coach, pretty similar kind of trajectory to Mayo at the end of the day, a young defensive coordinator kind of unexpectedly coming into the team as the head coach, buy-in from the players. And his first year, there were times when you're like, oh, wow, this team wasn't ready for the second half, or this team got really amped for one game, but they came down, they played down to their next opponent. And in-game management, oh gosh, did they sequence it right at the end of the half so that they can get an extra possession or something like that? So I think there are things that he can practice. He's probably doing it trying to do it during preseason games, during practices, in terms of just kind of game management. Everyone in the back of their head has that Nathaniel Hackett kind of like, oh no, could it be that bad? Yeah, exactly.
Jeez.
You don't want to bring that that aura over here, but you don't know. I wasn't following the Broncos that much, but I don't think immediately everyone was like, oh my gosh, he doesn't know how to coach, for lack of a better term. And we're not going to know this. I don't think that's going to be the case, but it's just getting the reps. Obviously, Bill was the head coach for 25 years across 2 franchises. He's seen everything. So he knows how to sequence, how to make halftime adjustments. And the question is that there's no place where Mayo is going to be able to do that year one. I don't think anyone is expecting that, but it's showing that in game 5 versus game 15, hopefully there's some improvement.
Yeah, you want to see progress. Same with the young team, which is what this is now. Same with the young players at quarterback, at receiver, and the offensive line, a couple on defense, that you just want to see them get better. And I think to dismount here, it will be rough for stretches. Mayo is going to blow some game management, bad timeouts, different challenges, game plans that just put them in a 20-0 hole immediately, because that's what rookie coaches do. And the thing is, to your point, you want to see them learn from it. I don't know if he will. I categorize this as a worthy gamble when he was hired based on the things that I had known at that point in time, which is all you can go off of. Though the Krafts apparently knew after 3 years they wanted him to be the new coach in this magical trip to Israel. But the point is, before it gets good, he's a rookie. It's going to be rough. And I think everyone will have to endure it, and he'll get criticized, and he knows that's coming. I will just be very curious how he is in a public sense, if and when they're 2-6, which we all expect, and that's not being unfair to them. What's it like then? And what's it like in the locker room? Does he still have guys going the extra mile for him when, their highest hopes and dreams, and they might think, some of them, that they can push for the playoffs? Who knows? But that's the time where a coach really needs to be a head coach in a way that we don't always see on Sundays. All right, he's Joe Shoddy. Don't ask him about his boss. It's a family business. But otherwise, you can talk to him about the Patriots anytime. I'm sure we'll have you back in a little bit. Thank you for donating. Thank you for being on the show, and we'll keep in touch, all right?
Absolutely. Thanks for having me, Andrew.
So one of the parts about being a Patriots beat writer is you get a lot of people, especially this time of year, starting to ask you, hey, do you get access to tickets? No, I have a press pass. It's got my name only. It's for one seat. That's it. But if I were going to go get you tickets, I would be happy to. And you know where I would go? Game Time, the #1 place for tickets to the Patriots, NFL, college football, concerts, everything you want to find. Because at Game Time, there's a lowest price guarantee where if you find a lower price elsewhere, they will refund you 110% of the difference. Not only that, when you're on the app, as you've heard me talk about going to Sox games this year, I want an individual seat view because at Fenway, they're obstructed, but most places they're not. If you want to know what it will be like to sit in that seat before you buy the ticket, you can do that with the Game Time app. Plus, all-in pricing. No more late fees that you find out at checkout. And again, the lowest price guaranteed, or Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. So take all the guesswork out of buying tickets to football games, baseball games, or concerts with Game Time. Download the Game Time app today. Create an account and use the code CLNS. That's CLNS for $20 off your first purchase. Terms do apply. Again, all you have to do, download the Game Time app, create an account, and redeem code CLNS for $20 off. That's $20 free for you at Game Time. Download Game Time today for last-minute tickets in the lowest price guaranteed. Back here with the 4-minute drill, Rhamondre Stevenson, our third guest. I don't know if that offends you, if you're honored to be here following Hunter Henry, following Pop Douglas. I just gave you the rundown. It's 4 minutes straight. Football questions alternated with non-football questions. I'm going to start the clock, and then we're going to go, all right?
Yes, sir.
Oh, and the only rule is everyone knows, unlike a real 4-minute drill, you cannot run out the clock. So we got to go a rapid fire talk real. All right, ready, set. First one. Today essentially marks the end of training camp. Next week is a regular season style prep week. If I give you a little bit of truth serum, how happy are you that you're done with camp?
Very happy. It's an accomplishment to, get through camp, and it's a long grind. So to be done with it, it feels good.
All right, very good. So you told me a story, I think last season, maybe 2 years ago, about working at a Walmart once. We were talking about odd jobs, and there was this giant milk pallet that spilled everywhere in the Walmart. You told me you had some sort of milk phobia. Can you update us on the milk phobia? Can you not smell it? Do you not want to see it? Obviously, you don't want to drink it.
Right. I haven't even drank milk in so long, and probably a couple years. I don't eat cereal too much, anything like that. So after that pallet of milk fell, it was a wrap.
Because it was a smell, right?
It was just over with.
All right, glad to be at a Walmart back in his hometown, Las Vegas. Let's go back to the field. The hardest hit you've taken in a game. I need the who, the when, and how to happen.
Finna get bro this clout. He used to play here. Landon Roberts.
Ooh, yes, dark grind.
Yeah, it was actually, he hit me twice. I ain't gonna lie. My 2 hardest hits I took from a Landon. So in my first game, he hit me. We played him twice a year. The second game, he hit me.
So Miami 21, right? The season opener.
Yep, exactly.
Okay.
Yeah. Don't go look at the receipts either. Just believe me.
Did you see him in Pittsburgh at all? Did he hit you at all when he was with them?
Nah.
All right, that's 2 football questions in a row. We're already breaking the rules here in the 4-minute drill. Mayo has talked to us about this new players lounge. You got an Xbox in there. There's a PS5. There's a pool. Give us a moment in there. Take us inside. I don't know if you're playing, but somebody else. Just take us inside the lounge.
Oh, yeah. Just yesterday, me and Kevin Harris, last week, I ain't gonna lie, he beat me. South Carolina against Oklahoma. I was Oklahoma, of course. He's South Carolina. But yesterday, I got him back. Beat him with some plays we run in practice, so it was kind of fun.
Okay, playing some NCAA. I still need to get that, but I also my free time because I feel like I would just get home and get sucked into it.
All right.
All right, 2 players in the locker room. One who would make the best roommate, and someone who you would guess would make the worst roommate.
Best roommate, I would say I'll say KB.
Okay.
He'll just get you ready in the morning, bring that energy, and get you ready for your day, I feel like. And you said the worst?
Yeah.
The worst roommate?
I don't know if you're a neat guy, you don't mind a little slob, or they're up late, but
let me think.
We got 90 seconds.
I'm running the clock out?
Yeah. You're going to get delay game.
Worst roommate? I'll say Pop Douglas, bro. He played too much.
Okay.
He's just too playful. He gonna be trying to, talk mess all day. I'm not with that. I'm just trying to chill, Pop.
He's off the ball. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Next question. Going off the field now. How does Rhamondre Stevenson deliver the bad news of breaking up with someone? Are you a good breaker-upper?
I'm not. I'll just ghost you, to be honest.
Really?
Yeah.
Man, that's disrespectful.
I know.
All right, let's look ahead. Week 1, you're playing Cincy. You haven't seen these guys in a while, since 22.
Mm-hmm.
Just give me one thought, an actual real thought, not canned, like podium answer about facing the Bengals.
I know they have a great defense. Just how they fly around. It's not even the people, not even like the individual, just their defense as a whole. They play really nice together and they fly around. So hopefully we could match that on offense.
Would you play tomorrow if you could? Like
of course, yeah. My body feels ready and I'm ready.
All right, last one. We got 20 seconds left. This is a staple on the 4-minute drill. What's your least favorite media question?
Least favorite media question? When y'all ask me about the quarterbacks.
Because you don't know what to say, or you don't want to get in trouble.
I don't know what to say. Like, I'm out there with him, but I'm not a quarterback.
Right.
I just know when he hands me off the ball, it's a good handoff.
Cool. All right, well, I'm going to hand it back to Jackson, our producer here. That's 4 minutes with Rhamondre Stevenson. Appreciate you, bro.
Yes, sir. Thank you.